Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Uh, because of the composition of this audience, I don't have to tell you much about type 2 diabetes, and it's becoming a major global healthcare crisis. The problem with type 2 diabetes is that it's costing the US healthcare system 1 out of every 7 healthcare dollars, $232 billion last year. And it's difficult to control these costs because current pharmacological treatments don't really work to control type 2 diabetes. Fortunately, about 10 years ago, surgeons discovered that when they performed bariatric surgery called gastric bypass on patients, 85% of the patients went into remission of type 2 diabetes. The problem with surgery is that it's expensive, it is invasive, and it's not reversible. So even patients who are eligible for the surgery do not opt for the surgery. What I'm going to tell you is that there is a potential for actually making a very simple medical device, and I have it in my hand. And what it does is bypasses the first part of the gut, about 60 centimeters in length, and does not allow nutrients to come in contact with the proximal duodenum and jejunum, and does not allow the pancreatic juice and bile juice to mix with food. What this does is causes dramatic neurohormonal changes. A GLP-1 gets secreted at a higher level, a satiety hormone called PYY gets secreted at a higher level, the resting energy expenditure goes up. So consequently, when a device like this is implanted in patients, in about 6 months, they lose about 20% of their body weight, and their HbA1c levels can come down by about 2 points. We have done about 15 patients outside the US in India at a major hospital called the Asian Institute of Gastroenterology. We have done only 3 months implants, but what we have been able to show is that in 3 months, people lost 12% of their body weight, and HbA1c levels came down by 1.5 points. The procedure is very quick. It's an endoscopic outpatient treatment done under conscious sedation. It requires minimal training for an average gastroenterologist to implant. It is going to cost probably less than $2,500 per year on an annualized cost basis. We'll probably sell the device for about $4,000, and there are some costs associated with monitoring the patient. But as compared to bariatric surgery, which costs $35,000, and drug therapy that costs $9,200 per year, our solution will only come at $2,500 per year. The market opportunity just in the US, if we were to only treat about 10 million patients of the 30 million type 2 diabetes patients, is in the $50 billion range. And globally, it's about $100 billion. Like I said, we have completed 15 patients outside the US so far. We want to do 10 more patients outside the US, do a European approval trial at the end of this year, and also a pilot FDA study. We are raising currently $2.5 million, out of which $700,000 has already been committed. And we believe after getting European approval and completing the pilot FDA study, we can do an IPO, which will lead to a dramatic return on investment for our current investors. So in summary, what I would like to say is that we have developed a very simple endoscopically placed implant that mimics the metabolic features of gastric bypass surgery. It's based on an established clinical foundation. We have a superior product. A competitor of ours had developed a similar liner and had treated 3,500 patients, but they had used hooks to anchor their device, and consequently they caused liver abscess, and they had to stop their FDA trial. But otherwise, their efficacy was very great. We have an experienced team. I have developed medical devices for the last 30 years, including developing a device called AngioSeal, which has been put in 40 million patients. We are also working with the Mayo Clinic in the US and the Asian Institute of Gastroenterology in India. And we expect significant return on investment with our medical device technology in the next 3 years. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That was good. You hold on to that.
Yeah.
We have questions, so we're going to go to our judges for questions. We have 5 minutes of questions. Who would like to start? Judges? Anyone? All right.
Thanks for the presentation. Can you tell us a little bit about the, like, how do you think consumers or people who have diabetes would adopt this, and what's the alternative solution? Can they go with non-invasive procedures?
So currently, surgical procedures that are the minimally invasive are laparoscopic, and they cause permanent rearrangement of your anatomy. This is a reversible procedure where you can put the implant in 10 minutes and remove it in 5 minutes. So if the results of this therapy were to sustain over a period of time, then this would become a very preferable therapy for those patients. The alternatives are obviously pharmacological therapy, but most pharmacological regimens cause individually as a drug cause a 0.5 reduction in HbA1c per drug.
Thank you very much. Nice presentation. I didn't hear anything about the animal studies, but when you remove it, are you expecting a rebound phenomenon? Because you're doing a sort of a temporary shielding.
Our competitor has shown that 12 months post explantation of their device, they were able to have 75% of the patients show sustained metabolic effects. 25% of the patients reverted back. So our goal is to keep this device in maybe for 2 years, wait for a couple of years maybe, and then if need be, reimplant it. So that's why I talked about an annualized cost of about $2,500 per year.
Great presentation. As a surgeon, I'm concerned about the device and potential long-term complications or things as erosion around the implant site. Do you have an alternative plan if you encounter any of these during your trials, what to do about
Our
it?
implant does not exert any radial forces on the stomach or the small intestine. And we have done extensive animal studies. We have survived the animals for about a year, and we don't see any pressure necrosis or ulceration. In humans, we have only done 3 months of implantation. Yeah.
One more question on the device, also from a surgical question. Is that metallic? Is one end of it metallic?
The
Yes.
stent-like structure is a braided
Yeah.
nitinol or nickel titanium alloy stent,
Right.
but is fully covered with silicone, and that's why there is no tissue ingrowth.
Right.
So when we remove the device after 3 months or 6 months, we don't have any tissue ingrowth.
And how does it affect imaging?
Imaging in terms of MRI, you mean? So this device is unfortunately not MR compatible because it consists of nitinol, but other imaging modalities are. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about your team? that you have?
Yeah, so currently we have 4 full-time employees. I'm an engineer by training, PhD in biomedical engineering from Washington University. 3 of the full-time employees are engineers, and then we use consultants to manage our clinical, regulatory affairs. And then from a medical advisory board, we have 5 physicians, Dr. David Cummings from the University of Washington, who's an endocrinologist, Saeed Ikramuddin, who is the head of bariatric surgery of the University of Minnesota, and also the head of surgery, Dr. Barham Abudai, who's the chief gastroenterologist for bariatric surgery at the Mayo Clinic, and Dr. Nagi Reddy, who used to be president of the World Endoscopy Organization for 3 years, who does our trials in India.
Any audience questions? You mentioned the metabolic benefits. What would be the metabolic disadvantages when compared to surgery such as malabsorption, loss of fat soluble?
Yeah, so typical surgery bypasses about 4 feet of the small intestine, and that leads to quite severe vitamin B deficiency and also iron deficiency. What we have been able to show is that we only need maybe oral supplementation of iron after our procedure. And in terms of referring to the metabolic effects, actually this procedure can cause dramatic reduction in liver fat within 4 months of implantation. That's what our competitor was able to show. So for non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, for example, and there are applications to things like PCOS for infertile women, and then also obviously weight loss.